Today on the Big Six in 60, Bill Belichick misses out on the Hall of Fame.
Bill Belichick should have unanimously been voted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
The Bills promote Joe Brady to head coach.
Brandon Beane and Joe Brady stay, and they both get promotions.
And the Miami Hurricanes finally have their next quarterback.
Miami now has one of the top signal callers in the country again. Third straight year.
This is the Big Six in 60, the six biggest national sports stories from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big Six in 60 starts now. Thank you for making the Big Six in 60 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Bill Belichick has earned the reputation of best coach in NFL history, but the voters in Canton, Ohio yesterday decided he isn't a first ballot Hall of Famer. How could the six-time Super Bowl champion miss out on the Hall? Nick Cattles wonders the same thing on Locked On Patriots.
This is absolutely stunning. Breaking news from ESPN just a little while ago. Bill Belichick will not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Don Van Natta and Seth Wickersham reporting for ESPN. They wrote, Bill Belichick, the 8-time Super Bowl winning coach, is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. In voting earlier this month, Belichick fell short of the 40 out of 50 votes needed for induction to the Pro Football Hall of Fame during his first year of eligibility. 4 sources with firsthand knowledge of the outcome told ESPN. Belichick received a call from a Hall representative last Friday afternoon with the news that he won't be inducted into the Hall in Canton, Ohio this summer. Several sources who spoke with the coach over the weekend described Belichick as quote-unquote puzzled and quote disappointed unquote by his inability to secure support from at least 80% of Hall committee members. When told that Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, Peter King, a 32-year Hall of Fame voter who didn't cast a ballot this year, said, holy bleep, oh bleep. The bleeps begin with F. I'm very, very surprised, unquote. King went on to say, quote, a lot of things happen in that room that are unexpected. And of course, this is a big surprise to me. Even Patrick Mahomes went to Twitter to react to this news. Patrick Mahomes posted insane ... Don't even understand how this could be possible. 80% of the vote. Bill Belichick couldn't get 80% of the vote. Bill Belichick should have unanimously been voted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame as a first ballot coach. Unanimously, let alone 80%. Who are the 11, at least the 11, who are the 11 people that decided that Bill Belichick was unworthy of being a first ballot Hall of Fame coach? This is an absolute joke. It is shameful. It is embarrassing. It is downright ridiculous for anybody in that committee, even for the people who voted for Belichick. They should be embarrassed. They know it's ridiculous. This is a shameful process. This is a circus. There is nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, in the world of coaching football that deserves to be a first ballot Hall of Famer than Bill Belichick. There's no one on God's green earth. There's nobody before him. There's nobody during his time. There's nobody since he left the league. Yes, unceremoniously. But this is somebody who won 6 Super Bowls as a head coach. 6. Outrageous. And not only that, Belichick, of course, also won 2 Super Bowls as an assistant coach in the league. A total of 8 rings, and you're not a first ballot Hall of Fame guy? Oh, and also his defensive game plan from the Super Bowl while with the Giants as the defensive coordinator, that is in the Hall of Fame. That sits in the Hall of Fame. The defensive game plan from Bill Belichick, the DC, made it to the Hall of Fame quicker than Bill Belichick as the head coach. That's insane. This should have been a no-brainer. This should have been the easiest vote in the history of this committee. If anybody actually argued against voting for Bill Belichick, they should have been thrown out of the room. They should have been shunned. They should have been told to walk out the door, not come back until they figure out what's right and what's wrong. This is just crazy. The head coach that is second all-time in wins, a record, including the playoffs, of 333 and 178. It's just patently absurd. Revoke memberships, kick people out. They should not have the right to ever vote again. That's how bad this is. And I understand he had Tom Brady. Every great coach has a great quarterback, or at least a very good quarterback. Every single one of these head coaches needed talent to win Super Bowls, needed talent to win football games. Bill Belichick is no different. It's crazy that somebody could win 8 Super Bowls and not be a first ballot guy. And don't talk to me about there's always next year. What's the difference, Nick, of him being voted in as a first ballot guy or voted in a year from now or 2 years from now? Don't give me the always next year. When you are a first ballot guy, that speaks volumes. That puts you at the very tippity top. That's the cream of the crop that we're talking about. When you're a first ballot Hall of Famer, it means you were the best of the best. And Bill Belichick is the best head coach that has ever done it. And the fact that he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer is a smack in the face to him. It is disrespectful. It is dismissive. It is, again, outright ridiculous. I would even say a trebuchet mockery on our hands. You get in as a first ballot person to any Hall of Fame because of the respect that you garner from your colleagues. It's a statement. It's a spotlight. It's highlighting the fact that, again, you're the best that's ever done it, or at least one of the best that has ever done it. In a class of a bunch of Hall of Fame people, well, Hall of Fame coaches and players, there's a line. Difference between Hall of Fame person and Hall of Fame coach or Hall of Fame player. In that room, in that collective, you are the guy that's at the top of the mountain. That's the difference. That's why you should be first ballot. That's why don't talk to me about 2027's induction ceremony. And God forbid something ever happened to Bill Belichick from this point until next year's induction ceremony, if he gets in next year, which he absolutely should, or, just get rid of the committee altogether. God forbid something would ever happen to him and he does not get his day in Canton. That would be tragic. This is a joke. How in the world did Bill Belichick not get in as a first ballot guy? What are the reasons why he doesn't get in? We have some info, some intel on that. But first, I want to get to a couple of your comments. Steven Grossberg, there has to be a way Goodell overrides this. Yeah? Nope. There's no way that he can override it. Let's not forget Roger Goodell works for the owners. It's not the other way around. And the owners, I don't think, care much. I don't think they're worried about Bill Belichick not making it in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. So Roger Goodell is going to sit there on his hands and watch all of this play out. Parker Conrad, NFL Hall of Fame committee is a joke. Could not agree more. Absolute joke. Elt 31987, while I agree, I can't help but think of the human factor, someone who disagrees with Bill's off the field life and deciding not to vote for him. Again, this is not about the human being. It's not about the person. This is about your accomplishments in the NFL, what you did as a head coach. And if you let Bill's personality or who he is as a human being, if you let that affect your voting, you should not be voting. David McWork, I don't like Bill, but he is 100% a Hall of Famer. No doubt about it. I appreciate the comments. Keep sending them my way. So how in the world is Bill Belichick not a first ballot guy? Pettiness. Sore losers. Don Van Natta, Seth Wickersham of ESPN wrote, a source familiar with Belichick's thinking said, quote, politics kept him out. He doesn't believe this is a reflection on his accomplishments, unquote. Van Natta and Wickersham write, multiple sources told ESPN that Spygate and Deflategate came up in deliberations among voters. A voter who spoke on condition of anonymity said that Bill Polian, an ardent Kraft supporter, Robert Kraft, of course, and former GM of the Buffalo Bills and Indianapolis Colts, told some voters he believed Belichick should, quote-unquote, wait a year before induction as penance for Spygate. Commissioner Roger Goodell also fined the Patriots $50,000 and Belichick $250,000 at that time for Spygate. And, of course, it cost the team a first-round pick. This is embarrassing. This is junior high. This is high school. Bill Polian should absolutely be embarrassed by what he said during these meetings and believing that Bill Belichick should not be voted in to the Hall of Fame because of Spygate. If you believe that Spygate or Deflategate is enough of a reason to not induct Bill Belichick into the Hall of Fame as a first ballot guy, then you should believe Bill Belichick doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame at all. If it's that serious, he should never get in. If you're truly angry about him, quote unquote, cheating the game, he should never be allowed in the Hall of Fame. It's utterly ridiculous to say, well, he deserves to wait a year because of Spygate. Wait a year? An arbitrary term thrown out there by Bill Polian? Bill Polian? I mean, what are we doing here? As if other head coaches haven't done sketchy stuff. As if other teams haven't done sketchy stuff. As if the Indianapolis Colts, by the way, have not done sketchy stuff. Hey, Bill Polian, how about pumping in fake noise through your speakers in your dome? How about some of the stuff about the heat inside the stadium at times? How about some of the rumors about the water that was being served by we've got all these controversies and conspiracies. Bill Polian and the Indianapolis Colts have done some things that have made a lot of people around the league wonder. But Bill Polian, the pettiness in holding this against Bill Belichick. You want to know why Bill Polian's upset? It's not because of Spygate. It's not because of Deflategate, which, by the way, we all know was a nothing burger and has been proven to be a nothing burger since the fraudulent investigation that was held. You want to know why Bill Polian's upset at Bill Belichick? It's because Bill Belichick's Patriots beat the bag out of Bill Polian's Colts. It's because if Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and the Patriots never existed, Bill Polian and Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts would have won many more Super Bowls. That's why.
It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. The Bills interviewed plenty of candidates, but ended up hiring from within by promoting offensive coordinator Joe Brady to head coach. Locked On Bills host Joe Marino tells us what the hire means for Buffalo.
The Buffalo Bills have a new head coach, and it's Joe Brady, promoted from offensive coordinator to the 17th head coach in Buffalo Bills history. And so we are going to react to it on this episode. We'll start by getting into some of the vibes. Then I want to talk about reasons to be optimistic, and then, of course, reasons to be concerned. The Bills interviewed 9 candidates for this job, and the first one they interview gets the job in Joe Brady, an in-house promotion for Joe Brady. And my first thought in hearing this news was that the Bills are telling you loud and clear how much they believe Sean McDermott was the biggest reason why they couldn't get over the proverbial playoff wall. And we know all about how much the defense has struggled in those playoff elimination games. And Sean McDermott, obviously a defensive-minded coach, and that's very, very frustrating. Now, the offense has certainly had some opportunities as well that they couldn't capitalize on, but mostly I think you point at the defense. And so Sean McDermott's out, but Brandon Beane obviously stays. And not only does Joe Brady stay, he gets a promotion just like Brandon Beane. So Brandon Beane and Joe Brady stay, and they both get promotions. I think you can look at the history with Sean McDermott and those playoff games, and just generally considering that he's had 7 chances at playoff runs with Josh Allen and never even got to the Super Bowl, and realize that obviously a change at head coach was very much justified and something I completely understand. I know that a lot of people are going to call this a comfort hire for the Bills, and a lot of hope that with the Bills moving on from Sean McDermott, that you'd see a lot of evolution in the direction of the Bills. That was a hope from a lot of people. And in some ways, I was hopeful for that as well. And so, was this a comfort hire? Well, Albert Breer shared on X just minutes after the announcement came through. This is what he said, and I think there's a lot to it. He said a couple keys in the Bills' hire of Joe Brady. There was a head coach as CEO piece of every candidate's interview with Buffalo. Brady hit a home run on that. And Brady's promotion allows for scheme continuity and easy alignment with GM Brandon Beane, who made this call, and the scouts. So if you believe it is a comfort hire, then I think the Bills are guilty as charged. Now, we'll listen to the press conference. We'll see what everyone has to say about it. But this smells like a comfort hire, and it probably is. The question is that a problem? The Bills have had a lot of success, right? They've won a ton of games. They've won at least one playoff game every year for the last 6 seasons. And so while I feel like there's an urgency and a desire for an evolutionary hire, it's not like they needed to completely tear it down. Maybe you wish they would. But this isn't a team that's really loaded with the resources necessary for a full overhaul here. I also want to be careful to not assume that there's not evolution with Joe Brady, who's not Sean McDermott. He's not. I'm very curious to see what direction certain things go that gives us an idea of how much of the things that have frustrated us are on McDermott. And this is going to give you a pretty clear opportunity, because Joe Brady is now this team's head coach and not Sean McDermott. The other thing that I want to point out is, while I understand this is going to be an unpopular decision by the Bills amongst Bills Mafia, Joe Brady was very much a serious candidate in this cycle and has been for a few cycles. There were 10 vacancies. 6 of them interviewed Joe Brady, and he was a guy that got second interviews for several teams, including Baltimore. So it's not like the Bills just took somebody that wasn't regarded across the league as a potential head coach and made him their head coach. This is a serious candidate. So what's going to change, right? That's where I find myself very interested. What changes here? I'd assume quite a bit on the defense, right? Because you took the offensive coordinator, made him the head coach. You told us you like a lot about what's going on with the offense. You get rid of the defensive-minded head coach, and I would expect there to be some big-time changes on that side of the ball. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Bobby Babbitt stays as defensive coordinator. We're going to see where this goes, but it certainly feels like that Sean McDermott piece, the defense piece, has kind of been the bigger issue. And I'm curious to see what changes there are on that side of the ball and honestly how the offense evolves. But that post from Albert Breer about Bean being the one who made the call and for this to allow for scheme continuity and easy alignment with the general manager and the scouts is pretty central, I think, to why they made this move. And so we'll see where it goes. As I've maintained throughout this entire process, I'm open-minded. I am open-minded. And there is no instant gratification coming for anybody right now in terms of who's right about this. So take it for what it is. Be aware of the pros, be aware of the cons, cling to those pros, and root for it to work out. There's no instant gratification coming. So we'll see where it goes. And obviously, there's a lot of intrigue in what happens from here.
The Broncos made the AFC Championship game this season, but still decided to make a coaching change by firing offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi Tuesday. Sire Benninger and Cody Rourke explain the move on Locked On Broncos.
The Broncos and Sean Payton have fired offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi. We'll talk about maybe what led to this decision. Could the Broncos and Sean Payton be trying to convince Davis Webb to stay? And if Davis Webb ends up taking the Las Vegas Raiders job, could Zach Strief be another in-house option to be the OC by title? We'll break it all down here on today's episode of the show. Sarah, obviously some breaking news here today, just hours after Sean Payton met with all of us for his end-of-the-year press conference. No indication whatsoever of any potential staff changes, but after that, just 6 hours after the fact, Sean Payton has in fact made his first staff change. He has fired offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi, which in honest opinion is very interesting considering they're buddies, but we all know Joe Lombardi didn't call the plays, didn't design the offense. He was just the OC by title. This was an interesting move here for the Broncos to make, all that information considered.
Very, very interesting. Obviously, Joe and Sean go back to their days in New Orleans together. I guess I'm not sure if they go back further than that, Cody, but obviously he's been a longtime assistant and trusted, sort of offensive mind for Sean Payton to kind of have in that brain trust. We know that Sean has a number of guys, whether it's Pete Carmichael as well. They brought back Johnny Morton, the former pass game coordinator who was the OC in Detroit. They brought him back as a consultant for the playoffs. So Sean has his circle, right, of guys that he likes. And certainly you figure, okay, Joe Lombardi, he's kind of just going to be around. He's been around since 2023, but now the Broncos are at a point where, like you mentioned, they're going to have to recruit like Davis Webb to stay if they want to keep him. They're going to have to recruit potentially Zach Strief to stay if they want to end up keeping him. I know Strief hasn't gotten the head coaching love that Davis Webb has, but he's extremely and very highly valued inside that Broncos organization. We know that he's the assistant head coach. I don't know how many listeners realize that Zach Strief has the title of assistant head coach. He is extremely valued by this team and protected by them in terms of teams trying to poach him away. So the Broncos are well aware of that. Sean Payton is aware of that. The thing that we hopefully will get a chance to talk about on this emergency episode of the show is what would the ramifications be, not to put the cart ahead of the horse, but if Davis Webb was hired as the new OC in title, would that come with responsibilities that we've never seen Sean Payton give to somebody else within his offensive structure?
I think that's a great question here, right? Because for Davis Webb, who is garnering strong head coaching interest from the Las Vegas Raiders, as we all know, no previous coordinator experience here in the NFL for him. So making the jump from being a position coach to being a head coach, that is kind of unprecedented in a sense of what we're seeing in today's NFL. Usually you see experienced coordinators, guys who've had success, usually get those jobs. And for Davis, he's a young guy. So for me to just see that as a possibility would be interesting. But it is worth noting here at this point in time with Davis, I think the initial impression was when the Broncos first hired him as the quarterback coach, they were going through the interview process and, they had the interview at the team facility. Davis Webb got in the taxi or the Uber. And then Sean Payton said, wait, why are we letting him leave the building? So they called him. They had the driver turn back around. He came on and signed a contract. Davis, I will tell you this, talking to offensive players, talking to quarterbacks, and even hearing it from Sean himself, he's such a bright young mind in terms of offensive innovation, his experiences. He's very detailed and prepared when it comes to scouting reports. That was one of the things that sold Sean on hiring him initially as a quarterback coach in the first place. And think about this. Davis Webb still had some offers to go be a quarterback or to sign on to a roster as a backup for several NFL teams at that point. It's not like he was out of the NFL. There was some serious interest, but he wanted to make the jump into coaching where he felt like he had more of a chance to make an impact here going forward. And you hear Bo Nix, Jarrett Stidham, Sam Ehlinger. You hear these guys talk about Davis Webb. He has been so valuable to the offense's growth, I would say, over time. Now, has Denver's offense been perfect? I think you and I can sit here and say, hey, they have their own issues that they must correct, including the run game, including better production from the receivers in the drop department. We'll obviously talk about that, I think, on tomorrow's episode of the show. But Davis has been a very big proponent, I'd say, of Bo Nix's growth here. And I'd say Bo has probably been his biggest advocate. So I'm with you, Sarah. That's the question we have to ask. With Joe Lombardi getting fired by Sean, who we know is the play caller, as the designer and the implementer of this offense here, if you do entice Davis Webb to stay on as offensive coordinator, is Sean Payton going to hand off the reins to him? I think from what we know, just what we've perceived about Sean, does that seem very likely to you? I don't think it does, but maybe Sean Payton is getting to the point where he doesn't want to drive in the rain at night.
I was going to bring that up from the quote that he had that you're referencing right there from January 15th, where he was talking about that. And the situation, the fourth down play that's going to continually get brought up until the freshness of the AFC Championship game has worn off, right? That fourth down situation, there's so much going on for a head coach and play caller at the time, right? So you're the head coach of the team. You've got to decide, hey, do I need to take a timeout here? Are we going to get a measurement here? What situation, like what are the Patriots showing us defensively? What personnel package do I want to have out there offensively? How do I weigh our what we do all season long going forward in these fourth and short situations from this yard marker on into the end zone versus having a backup quarterback out there and having that scenario in the back of your mind? There's so many different things that are going on in that one moment that a delegation of one particular thing, Cody, would have helped Sean Payton be the head coach in that situation, as opposed to the head coach and the offensive play caller, the chess match player going up against that New England Patriots defense in that moment. And the one thing that he could delegate in that moment is the play calling, and to say, Davis, I need you to come up with a play. I got to figure out what we're doing here. Are we getting a measurement? Why are we not getting one? Like, do I need to call a timeout? All those things that I just mentioned. And then weighing the analytics, the tendencies, the defensive look the Patriots are giving, all of that stuff, to be able to delegate that one thing to somebody else and to say, hey, you call the play here. And that allows Sean to do something that he's never done before as well, which is truly be the CEO of everything, as opposed to the CEO of everything and the play caller, right? There comes a point where you can't do everything. I'm learning this in my own personal life, Cody, very much so.
Same.
And so I think there comes a point where you have to realize, I can't do everything. I can't be in charge of building the roster. I can't be in charge of being the head coach and building the roster and calling the plays and managing the coaches and determining, hey, what music is being pumped in during the, the pregame so that it's not distracting or whatever. What's the temperature of the training? Or like all these different things. I get that Sean Payton's passionate about that stuff and I love it, but this is the one thing to be able to keep a great coach who's instrumental to your young quarterback. I think this is the one thing, if he's ever going to give it up, now's the time.
You said everything that I wanted to say about the CEO approach. I think Sean, in collaboration with George Payton, I think those guys will build this team the way that Sean wants it built, right? But can you take this younger player who's got bright visions, bright minds like a Davis Webb and say, hey, I'm entrusting you this? Could you imagine if Sean is just able to just manage the game from essentially like a decision-making standpoint? Now, ultimately, right, if Davis Webb is the OC, let him call the plays. But ultimately, Sean has the final say on what they decide to do. Not necessarily, I mean, maybe from a play calling standpoint, but when it comes to big time decisions like 4th and 1, are we going for it? Sean has the ultimate say in those, where now he can pay attention to the game. He's got his assistant up in the box that helps him with the analytical stuff, whatever it may be. But you're entrusting the young guy who's garnering a lot of interest and a lot of respect around the NFL to say, hey, I'm passing this off to you. I'm going to be in your ear though still, right? I imagine, but maybe you're going to hand him the keys and say, you know what? She's all yours, kid. You know, I've driven this vehicle for the last however many years, but now it's time for someone else to take care of her. Maybe that is the approach here from Sean Payton.
It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. The Miami Hurricanes had to wait a bit longer than they expected, but the U finally has its next quarterback in Duke transfer Darian Mensah, and got a bonus in the deal as well by landing Mensah's favorite receiver with the Blue Devils, Cooper Barkate. Locked On Canes host Alex Dono goes over a big day for Miami.
It's crazy. Cooper Barkate, a top 10 receiver nationally, signs with the Canes, joining his starting quarterback, Darian Mensah. Miami now has one of the top signal callers in the country again. Third straight year. If you thought Mario couldn't do it for the third straight year, was Cam Ward in 2024, goes on to be a number 1 overall pick. Was Carson Beck in 2025, who helps lead Miami to the national championship game. And now you get Darian Mensah, fresh off a season where he was the nation's second leading passer. Mario Cristobal has done it again. Yesterday was just a tornado of action. Tuesday. So Tuesday morning was when we officially got the word. Statements were released by Mensah's legal team, headed up by Darren Heitner, sports attorney, also Mensah's agency, and then the Duke legal team. They both put out statements confirming that the two sides had settled out of court and that Mensah would be free to transfer to the school of his choice, which we all knew by that time the school of his choice was going to be the University of Miami. So then after the settlement was released, by the afternoon time, Mensah and Barkate were both on campus in Coral Gables making their official visit to Miami. And they got, folks, if you're not aware of the amazing campus tour, golf carting around campus that Miami staffer and former Miami cornerback Mike Rumpf gives, his tours are legendary. So they got the full tour from Coach Rumpf, Barkate and Mensah, and then they got wined and dined in the evening. I would love to walk in the shoes of one of these recruits or transfer guys when they get taken to Prime 112. Mario Cristobal, Shannon Dawson, Malachi Toney was along for that as well. Edgerrin James was there. They went out to Prime 112 in the evening, out for a nice dinner. And then shortly after that dinner came to a close, you get the official announcements. Darian Mensah has signed with the University of Miami. Cooper Barkate, his top receiver from Duke, has signed with the University of Miami. So as far as Darian Mensah goes, folks, again, for those who didn't watch him this past season at Duke or prior year at Tulane, the talent is through the roof, and this is potential to perhaps be not only a first-round draft pick in a year's time. Now, he actually has 2 years of eligibility left. It's just a question of, does he want to stay in college for 2 more years? Because he has potential to be a first-round pick as soon as next year. And a lot of folks now realizing who Mensah is going to be playing with at Miami. He's going to have a better defense than the one that didn't help him out too much at Duke last year. He's going to have, even though Miami lost some pieces, he's going to have a better offensive line at Miami. Certainly going to have a better running back room because Miami's at least 5 deep at that position, which is crazy. A superior wide receiver room, including his number 1 guy, plus Malachi Toney and some other talents that we will talk about. So Darian Mensah, based on what he did last season without all of that extra help, just under 4,000 yards, 34 touchdown passes to only 6 interceptions, second leading passer nationally. If you project what he could do at Miami with all the extra talent and presumably extra wins, because winning does help your case, we're talking about someone who's going to be, I think, one of the top 2 or 3 favorites, if not the favorite for the Heisman Trophy this coming year. Like, that's the potential that Darian Mensah has at Miami. This player, Mensah, completed 67% of his passes last season for 3,973 yards. I mentioned 34 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. Second leading passer in the country. And if you look at the actual traits, I think what's extra exciting about Mensah, we talked about this earlier this week, he takes some of the best traits from Carson Beck in terms of a quick release, but also combines some of the best traits from Cam Ward in his ability to move and extend plays, okay? He throws the ball well on the run, which is a nice plus, and he always keeps his eyes downfield. Loves to attack downfield, produced a lot of offense on deep throws last year, 1,085 of his just under 4,000 yards, 13 of his touchdowns, and just 2 of his interceptions happened on throws of over 20 yards through the air. So he loves to attack. For Mensah, he had a lot of really good games last year. Excuse my voice for cracking there. I haven't slept a lot this week. I would say that the best game Mensah played this past season at Duke was in that 46-45 shootout win on the road against Clemson. In that game, he completed 66% of his passes for 361 yards, 4 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions. He also lit it up in his final game for Duke. That was against Arizona State in the Sun Bowl. 327 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception in that game. And Mensah, I can't emphasize this enough, he really seems like a perfect fit in Shannon Dawson's offense and is going to allow Dawson to fully open up and unleash the playbook. Because not only does Mensah like to attack downfield, where he led the nation with 86 deep ball attempts last year. Nobody went deep more than Mensah, but he also excels in the quick game. Over 77% of his passes were complete when getting rid of the football in under 2.5 seconds. Okay, so that's also someone getting the football to his playmakers in space is another thing that Darian Mensah excels in. Now, in terms of Mensah arriving at Miami after all of this, if you spend any time on social media, I hope you have a thick skin if you're a Miami fan. And I also hope that you embrace the envy, you embrace the jealousy, and you embrace the hate that's coming from other fan bases. Because, people feel a certain way about Mensah leaving Duke when he had another year on the NIL deal for $4 million. How could he leave his team high and dry? What is Miami doing? Stealing Duke's quarterback. You're going to see a lot of that, but something that people won't talk about in terms of Darian Mensah's point of view, because like I already mentioned, he's going to be one of the favorites to win the Heisman Trophy this coming season. He's going to have a better opportunity to win a national championship at Miami than he would have with Duke. I mean, he played, insane football last year at Duke, and the ceiling for that team was 5 losses, right? And that, he had a couple turnovers in the Illinois game. Like, he wasn't perfect, but 5 losses were not his fault. That was what was around him. So, people will accuse Darian Mensah of chasing the bag, but they should also talk about what a year at Miami can do for his career trajectory. Darian Mensah saw Cam Ward. Actually, Darian Mensah has worked out with Cam Ward recently, so I'm sure Ward put some good words in for Miami. Mensah saw Cam Ward go from a day 3 pick to number 1 overall at Miami and in Miami's offense, right? Mensah, this is someone who led the ACC in almost every category as a quarterback, still lost 5 games. If he had had the same season at Miami this past year as he had at Duke, we're talking 11-1 or 12-0 regular season, right? Mensah saw Miami reach the national championship game while his own team didn't get into the playoff despite winning their conference. So without question, the University of Miami can give Darian Mensah career opportunities that he likely cannot achieve on the field at Duke. That's the other side of it. People will talk about the money. I think it's also worth talking about the opportunity. And oh, by the way, Miami and Duke, they are going to play this year. They will go head-to-head November 14th at Hard Rock Stadium. That's going to be a little awkward, right? And hopefully Mensah will have, a better outcome because he faced his other former team last year. Duke lost to Tulane last year. I think I would handicap Miami's chances at beating Duke this year a little bit better than Duke versus Tulane last year, but they are going to go head-to-head on November 14th.
It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. The Nebraska basketball team faced its toughest test of the season last night and ended up falling on the road to number 3 Michigan for its first loss of the season. Mitch Sherman and Connor Happer recapped the top 5 matchup on Locked On Nebraska.
Final from Ann Arbor. Number 3 Michigan 75, number 5 Nebraska 72. That's about it, right? That's all there is to say about that game, huh, Connor?
Yeah, that's the whole story. No, that is not the story. The story here is that Nebraska down Braden Frager and down Rink Mast, who was sick and was maybe going to try and give it a go and didn't end up doing so. Picked apart Michigan in the first half by way of making 10 threes in the first half and getting whatever shot they wanted. I mean, it was an impressive display. And then the game got really, really, really choppy in the second half, and some bumpy roads and questionable calls. We'll talk about all that stuff. And Michigan grabs a lead late and hangs on to win by 3. The story here is that Nebraska, I mean, same as everybody else, I think, same takeaway as everybody else. Nebraska is for real, and it's hard to not imagine them, winning this game or it looking a lot cleaner had they been, with their two of their best, most important, impactful players.
Even one of their 2 most important players who were missing on Tuesday night might have made the difference to give Nebraska the victory in this game. Michigan in the first half looked unprepared to defend what Nebraska was throwing at it. And I think some of that is the difficulties that Nebraska and this Fred Hoiberg offense present. And then Nebraska did its normal thing, clamping down on defense, forcing all kinds of turnovers. This is not to take any credit away from Michigan. I'm sorry, not to take any credit away from Nebraska. But I thought the way that Michigan played basketball for the majority of that game was kind of embarrassing, considering the physical edge that the Wolverines had on Nebraska in this game. Sloppy, not. I wouldn't say it was all that smart or together. And they found a way to win it at the end. They got to the free throw line 20 sometimes. Michigan ends up with an edge on Nebraska at the line.
19 of 23.
19 to 23, and Nebraska made 3 free throws in the game? So
3 out of 4. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the story for sure. Nebraska shorthanded, gets in foul trouble, can't get to the free throw line. Part of the reason that Michigan got to the free throw line so much is because it was aggressive and going to the basket, and it had all kinds of size and advantage over Nebraska to be able to fight for rebounds that Nebraska just couldn't do. But
yeah, on that, Mitch, I felt like if anything, Nebraska should have maybe got to the line a couple more times just based off of what I saw. But really, the story is that Michigan should have been there less, just on the officiating side of things. They got into the bonus early and kind of slowed the game down and chopped it up and got to the free throw line and made those free throws. But it shouldn't, people there's going to be a lot of conversation about the free throw discrepancy in this game, and it's significant.
Yeah.
Nebraska, short-handed, undermanned in this game, was really going to have a difficult time, I think, making that look close because they had to win it from behind the 3-point line. And in the first half, they were on track to do so. But I still felt like Michigan should have got to the line less than they ended up getting to in the game, just by some choppy foul calls, especially late in the game.
And even with that, Nebraska had opportunities and just couldn't knock down threes, some open threes that could have extended the lead. Nebraska led for almost the entire game. Michigan finally, after having the lead for a few seconds in the first half, grabbed it back with about a minute to play in this game. Nebraska went the final 3+ minutes of this game scoreless, and there was good defense and aggressive play on both sides of the ball for Michigan. But Nebraska did get, notably, Jamarcus Lawrence got a couple of really good looks on the last possession for Nebraska before it had the desperation heave by Sam Hoiberg with 1 second left. And they just didn't knock down shots. Sanford, who was hot for a good chunk of this game, and Lawrence was red hot at the beginning of the game, they couldn't get shots to fall at the end, and they had to be exhausted because Nebraska was playing with its 5 starters and then
multiple of them in foul trouble. I mean, like all the guards. Jacobson played the last 6 or so minutes of the game with 4 fouls. I mean, because he had to, and then Sam picked up his 4th on what should have been a charge call. On a baseline play that I think gave Michigan the lead in the final 90 seconds or so of the game, and that would have been basically the first time all night. And then Lawrence ended up picking up his 4th as well. So they had 4. They played only 7 guys, and that was only 10 minutes from Jared Garcia, and like great minutes from Leo Curtis, and
hugely unexpected there, but somebody had to step up, and they got that from him. Yeah, with no mask, and Garcia was not especially effective and hasn't been so for his last couple of times on the court. They need to get him going and be more offensive minded and confident when he has the ball in his hands. They had to go to Leo Curtis, the true freshman from Iceland, 7'2", who showed you, I think, what has excited Nebraska, the Nebraska staff and people in the Nebraska program about him in the future. He's going to be a player that Nebraska can build things around, and we saw some glimpses of that in the first half, especially on Tuesday night.
Yeah, as you said though, I felt like Michigan's sort of plan at first was a little wonky, and like they were not handling like Nebraska's whole thing offensively, especially is to really precision pass and execute and move without the ball, and they were getting whatever they wanted in the game. Like when Lawrence had I think it was 4 straight possessions where he hit a 3, he on the 4th one, they went underneath him and left him wide open to shoot a 3-pointer. I'm like, what are you guys? And so in the second half, they kind of blew through a lot of those, and the game got a lot more physical. And then you put the game sort of in the official's whistle a little bit, and Michigan ended up on the right side of that too. But all told, man, what a freaking effort from Nebraska on the road to go there and do that. On top of one of our takeaways being, I'm not sure how super impressed I was about Michigan. This is not to take credit away from Nebraska, like you said. We've been saying it for weeks on this podcast now. Nebraska is every bit legit, and especially doing that the way they did, and the fight that they had on the road to go and pull that. I mean, impressive stuff. Setting up a huge game on Sunday.
I think Michigan should have won the game by 15 plus, just considering where Nebraska was at, and not the way the game went, but just if you clear the decks and you start over and say, look at this, Michigan should have won that game by 15 plus points, but Nebraska's sheer will and wanting it more and getting most of the loose balls, and the way that Nebraska played in the first half, that they punched Michigan in the face. Yeah.
I think a lot of it was coaching too. I think Nebraska just had they do what they do in their plan. And obviously they have a team who's full of guys who's going to execute it, but I thought they had the coaching advantage for the entire game.
And I think this is going to, For sure. And I think this is going to add to their confidence level. I think this is going to make Nebraska a stronger team. I think there was a story, or there was an option, a possibility that could have come out of this game where if Nebraska had gotten the doors blown off, its doors blown off, then you might have seen the need to build the confidence back up, especially with a really tough game coming on Sunday against Illinois and Lincoln. But the way that this whole trip went down, where Nebraska considered taking Braden Frager. We talked about this on the podcast on Tuesday. They didn't know up until right before the plane left, after he practiced on Monday and Tuesday, if Frager was going to be able to make the trip. He didn't make the trip. So that's a tough blow to absorb. And then when Nebraska got to Ann Arbor, all of a sudden Rink Mast comes down with the stomach flu, and he's hooked up to an IV for much of Tuesday. Is it two? Yeah. So Frager practiced on Sunday and Monday. My confusion there. Today's Wednesday. They got to Ann Arbor on Tuesday and on Monday, and Rink got sick on Tuesday before the game. Today is Wednesday, and didn't go through shoot around. Came out before the game. Tried to give it a go, and then before tip, they just said no, we're not going to do this to Rink. So smart for Nebraska to not put its star players at risk. And yes, they have an L now. They're 20-1, but they should be. You would think there's a good chance Nebraska can be at full strength on Sunday with Illinois coming to town.
It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting, from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. Indiana won the football national title less than 2 weeks ago, and last night the Hoosiers knocked off number 12 Purdue at home on the hardwood. Locked On Hoosiers host Jacob Goins recaps the upset in Assembly Hall.
Shout out Indiana, dude. Shout out to this team, because I didn't pick them. I didn't pick them to win this game. I said, heck no. I said, when Indiana shows me they can play good basketball for 40 minutes against a competent opponent, then I'll buy in. Then I'll believe it. Then I'll pick you to start winning these types of games. But we hadn't seen it yet. We've seen 20 minutes of good basketball. We've seen 30 minutes of good basketball. We've even seen close to 35 good minutes of basketball. But Indiana, against a team with a pulse, has not put together a full 40 minutes yet this season. Was tonight a great 40 minutes? No. It was a pretty darn good 20. It was an okay 30 and 35. There were some stretches in there, especially in that second half, that got super dicey. But you found a way to win. You completed the win. You got it done. Even after you blew a 14-point lead with less than 10 minutes to play, you still found a way to get it done. Indiana needed this. Darren DeVries needed this. The fan base needed this. For Indiana basketball, I know we've been celebrating football. We've been having a great time with that, but it's basketball season now. And Indiana fans needed something to reignite them with this team, with this new organization that we're watching. Tonight was that night. 72-67, Indiana takes down Purdue. And folks, that's a good Purdue team. That's a top 15 Purdue team. That's one that I know that they're reeling right now, clearly, and they did not play their best basketball tonight by any means. That's still a team I think has every opportunity to make a run at the Final Four. I still think they're that talented. I think they're that good. And Indiana outplayed them for 40 minutes tonight. And guess what? On both ends of the floor, Indiana beats Purdue by shooting the ball well and getting stops defensively. forcing turnovers, grabbing rebounds, getting up and down the floor. Sure, there were some open baskets that Purdue had, and they made some tough shots. They're a good team. They're going to do that. But Indiana didn't fold. Indiana didn't crumble like we've seen them do time and time again this season. That was the difference tonight. That was the difference, right? When something went wrong, Indiana didn't say, well, I guess it's over. I guess we're going to lose. No. They said, let's go make another play. Let's get back on the other end of the floor and see how we can make up for that. That was the difference tonight, was Indiana's mentality, was Indiana's effort, going after rebounds, going after loose balls, most of the defensive plays. Indiana's mentality was the difference this evening. You score 40 in the first half, just 32 in the second half. Your offense was great in the first 20 minutes. You get out to an 11-point lead. We knew it was going to cool off, right? We knew it was going to happen. It was inevitable. That's how this team works. That's how most shooting teams go. You weren't going to shoot 55, 56%, whatever it was, in the second half the way you did in the first half. It just wasn't going to happen. But could you find ways to score? Could you find ways to still put it in the bottom of the basket? There was a big stretch in there. What was it, 4 or 5 minutes that Indiana didn't hit a field goal? You got to the free throw line several times and left them short on 1-and-1s and had every chance, or gave Purdue every chance to win this game. And yet you still found ways to win. Let's dive into some of the numbers here on what was an incredible basketball game to watch. Loved watching this. This felt like Indiana and Purdue. I think Assembly Hall was a big difference. We'll talk about that, likes and dislikes, coming up in the next segment. Lamar Wilkerson did what he did. 19 points, 7 of 18 from the floor. 3-point shooting was poor, but guess what? He finally quit shooting them. He got downhill. He got to the lane. He found other ways to score. That's what good players do. He also had 7 boards, 3 assists. He did have 3 turnovers, 3 of just the 8 for Indiana in this game. That's a miracle in itself for Indiana. Nick Dorn, what a guy. What a guy. Gets the start again, steps in, and has 18 points, most of those coming in the second half. Hit a couple of just stupid threes in this game. He has quickly become one of Indiana's go-to guys offensively, and you rely on him now, and he gives you 18, 6 of 11 from the floor, 4 of 9 from downtown. Also had 2 rebounds in there as well. And then everything else was just kind of a big pot of stuff, like a big stew, if you will. Reed Bailey. Applaud for Reed Bailey. One of the best games he's played in the last, 2 months probably. 9 points, 3 of 4 from the floor, 3 of 5 from the free throw line, only 2 rebounds, but I don't care. He scored, right? He scored. I don't know what Purdue was doing, but they made him look like he played real basketball. And Reed Bailey put in 9 big points that Indiana had to have. You get 9 points from Tucker DeVries, most of that coming in the first half. He was still big in the second half. How about 9 points, 10 rebounds for Tucker? If you're not going to score, do something else. I've always said that in basketball. If you're not going to score, do something else. We know it ain't going to be defense for the most part for Tucker DeVries. So he said, cool, I'll get rebounds. He had 10 of them tonight. Goes along with 3 assists and just the 1 turnover for Tucker DeVries. Connor Enright, I got to say it. I have to, because I am the hardest person on him on the offensive end of the floor. That 3 that he shot on the dribble drive from Tucker DeVries, kick out for Enright, he was so open, the basketball gods would have been bad. They would have been mad if he didn't shoot it. But he didn't even hesitate. A guy that shoots what? What's his official 3-point percentage? I want to look this up going in or even coming out of this game. What is his official 3-point percentage before I totally dunk on this guy? 33%. Is what Connor Enright shoots from behind the arc. He gripped and ripped that thing like he shoots it at 60%, dude. He did not hesitate at all, and he buried it. Purdue had gotten back within 2. They were feeling it. They were clapping, smacking the floor. They were doing it all. Connor Enright said, cool, watch this, and buried that 3 from the left wing, and that was the dagger to take down Purdue. He has 8 points, 2 rebounds. How about 8 assists for Connor Enright as well? If you're not going to score, do something else. And that's what Connor Enright did. He had a good defensive game as well. Josiah Miles gives you 5. Sicily, again, not a huge impact in this game. Missed that one corner 3 late. Sam Alexis had just the 2 points. He wasn't a huge factor here either. But you win this thing 72-67. Hoosiers take down the Boilermakers in the biggest win of the season.
That's all for today's Big 6 in 60. If you follow basketball, football, or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has a half hour on the biggest news in the NFL, the NBA, or on campus going up every weekend just like we do here. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA, the Big 3 in 30 NFL, or the Big 3 in 30 college, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 6 in 60.